Welcome back into Rover Sports, and we are here tonight with Garrett Jones again, and we haven't seen Garrett in quite a while, but it's great to catch up with you, man. You know, we got baseball, we got basketball. How is your mood this week different than maybe other weeks?
I've looked forward to this week for so long, and it was it's a good lesson, to kind of detach yourself from sports. You never want it to center. You never want your life to be completely centered around it, and I think that was very humbling for me. Go all the way back to April, and there was a time where I was just absolutely longing for baseball to be on. But now that we're here, it's been a good lesson to not take it for granted next time. I promise you that. I will. I'm sure you and every other sports fan tuning in will not take sports for granted after a lengthy absence like that. So I've been looking forward to this week for a long time, and I think Thursday and Friday it's going to be a really special day.
Yeah, I hear you on several fronts. I think that having sports back it's like kind of a necessity, but
Yeah.
like I can kind of relate to you because like my team, the New York Giants, like they've been poor the last 5 years. And if a team has a crappy season, then you're going to be in a terrible mood. You're going to get mad at the players. You're going to get mad at coaches. But now I would even sign up for in football. I'd even sign up for like a 2 and 14 years just to have the sport back.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like about the game. Because and about like kind of cherishing or being grateful for it, because you never knew that something like this, you would never know that something like this is going to happen. Now, have you found yourself like being all right without the sports, or were you still just, or has your mental health really just still been negative throughout the
No,
show?
I mean, I always tell people I'm fortunate to have a lot of people that have checked in during this time. A lot of great family and friends, and I always tell them I really myself and the people around me have absolutely no reason to complain because there are people being much more negatively affected by COVID than me. But I would say, you go back to April. I think our mental health as a nation was pretty bad. And that was certainly part of it, not having anything sports wise on in April. But then May started to roll around, and for me, having golf and NASCAR back has been the perfect bridge. Those sports are something that I've kind of followed from a distance. I guess you could kind of group auto racing in as a whole, with Formula One and IndyCar also returning too. Those have been sports that I follow kind of peripherally and just kind of put them on when they're on. But when June came around and golf started playing again, NASCAR picked it up the earliest out of any organized sport. I've gotten really into those watching over the past couple of weeks. So it's been a perfect bridge for me. I don't know about you. That made this time go by really fast before we get some big four sports back.
Yeah. So I would say, like, if I had to describe the journey that I went on with everything going on right now, I would say that March Madness was definitely tough, and it kind of also factors around because I'm up here in Pennsylvania. Our state's been pretty shut down. You're in Texas. So in Pennsylvania, like being able to play golf, because I golf with my dad, and being able to play the sport, get outside a little bit. So I think it was really tough. I think the first 3 weeks when like everything around your life was shut down. But now, now you could still kind of go to restaurants a little bit. There's a little bit of normalcy, but it's been frustrating. I would say, what is maybe the most frustrating thing? Maybe just all the negativity about college football not starting. Maybe the cases. Maybe sometimes the media does report things, but I think that it's very negative. Like this guy's got a case, that guy's got a case, and it's so much negativity. That eventually this virus can just catch up with you.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of unpack everything. I'd say the most frustrating thing for me is anybody who's laying out a timeline really doesn't know, right? I mean, we just don't know, and that's okay. Right now, we're in this weird sort of nebulous where I'm sure college athletic directors, anybody who's got a significant vested interest in college athletics and the NFL returning, is just like, oh man, I just want to soak in this time right now, because the pressure is starting to mount on them to make a decision, but they're not quite to crunch time yet, right? They still got a little bit of time. They're not behind schedule, even though NFL training camps are set to get going in the next couple of weeks. And, it's hard to believe that we're almost through July and college football kicks off the last weekend of August, theoretically. So they're starting to get to that crunch time where they're going to need to make some decisions. But I bet you that they're high-powered decision makers who are just trying to soak in every moment right now when they don't have to be miserable and make a big decision, or like we saw with Major League Baseball, get behind their original start date.
Yeah, I would like there to be I would like there to be like kind of a week or a 2 week kind of plan when the season lays out.
Yep.
So like here in Philadelphia, like I actually did take a little offense to the guy who's like, there's going to be no fans until February. He's trying to get out, ahead of certain things. But how do we know like how this is going to be,
Right.
different months of the year? And
Right.
just to cancel something like, and just to throw it away, that's not like a solution oriented sort of thing.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
want
remember
there to be some solutions a little bit. I definitely think this is super serious. And of course, like, yeah, I definitely think that this is super serious. And there could be innovative ways to get fans kind of in these ballparks, maybe for sports.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I can completely relate to your frustration in that. It was just like, I remember in, late March, early April, the New Orleans mayor saying that we needed to go ahead and cancel Mardi Gras for 2021. And I was like, that seemed like a bit of an overreaction. And then you had the Tournament of Roses, the Rose Bowl parade. The only Tournament of Roses that have ever been canceled were due to World War II. And they already went and canceled the 2021 parade. So, I mean, I think that this is my big thing with a lot of things in life. I always think that there's some kind of middle, right? I think there's some kind of a middle between those two overreactions and being smart and setting on a timeline and waiting until you have something at least within eyesight to make a decision on, but at the same time, not leaving people in the dust like the NFL is. I think that there's just some kind of middle there.
Right. So let's get into a little more positivity. I've been a big PGA Tour fan for a while. So do you play the game of golf? Because I've enjoyed it, and now a lot of fans, like maybe on Houston radio or even in Philadelphia radio, they might not lead with John Rahm, they might not lead with DeChambeau, but I've found this season to be very enjoyable, and the fans not being there doesn't really play a hindrance. Talk about your fandom of PGA Tour golf, DeChambeau, John Rahm winning. What excites you about the week-to-week kind of grind of this PGA Tour season?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because you've seen guys like DeChambeau take the opportunity to use the COVID break, if you will. That's what they've been referring to a lot of in the PGA Tour and NASCAR. They used it to better their craft, and more respect to them. This was a good opportunity for a lot of us in society and sports, and no matter what you're doing, to kind of hit the reset button and focus on what matters. But clearly to Bryson DeChambeau, what mattered was improving his game, and it has certainly paid off. But the interesting thing, last week at the Memorial, that is a big ticket tournament. It's not a major, but it's in the grouping of like with TPC Sawgrass, the Players Tournament, the Waste Management Open, the Honda Classic, those big ticket tournaments that a lot of the big names play on. And I was watching round 4 yesterday, and my goodness, I mean, big names struggle mightily on that course. I mean, it was terrible scoring conditions. Tiger Woods was +7 when I was watching. Jordan Spieth really struggled.
Yeah.
Rory McIlroy was +3. I mean, it seemed like Phil Mickelson was +6, and we've seen him play really well since the PGA Tour got back and playing.
The wind was just brutal.
It was brutal. I mean, it was really tough scoring conditions. And to answer your question, I love the game. I am not much of a golfer myself. I am I don't get to practice or play as consistently enough to improve any bit. But I totally respect the game. And on a day where it's not super hot, I played about a month ago and it was just sweltering heat. So it's never fun when you do that. But like in the fall,
I'm gonna have to, and if we ever get to hang out, Garrett, I'd have to teach you the game because
I would absolutely love that. I need a lot of. I have a hopeless slice, and I know like fundamentally just from like watching golf videos and watching the PGA Tour enough, I know where my slice comes from. I just don't know how to correct it. So I'm gonna take you up on that.
You have an open face, or the game of golf is just really athletic. People think that it's just like kind of swinging the club, but you really have to move. You have to turn your shoulders back and. Yeah, I've loved, the PGA Tour. Like, if you're serious about golf, like there was a time, Garrett, where I'm like, a couple of years ago, even where I'm like, I want to go play on a mini tour event because I'd say that I was like a 7, handicap, which is pretty decent, for golf. And I've, had that dream of, like I can go out there on the PGA Tour and do it.
That's
but
great.
when you play 70,000 yards like they're playing, or it's 7,000 and you have to hit it 320 or 330. I mean, the way these guys hit the ball. So it was kind of nice to see them struggle because that's what you've been hearing about is I don't like that whole narrative that just because DeChambeau's hitting at 350 that they have to stretch the courses out to like 8,000 yards or that they have to change the equipment in golf. I didn't like that at all. Those fans that were saying those sort of things and to have the guys struggle. It's a parity-laced sport right now. Without Tiger, you have John Rahm, Ricky, Bryson, and I think that the sport of golf, I think that it's very good having the guys mic'd up. So I've always kind of enjoyed it, like you said, and I could tell that you enjoyed covering it for more than just this year.
Yeah, I love Jordan Spieth. He's my favorite. He's from relatively close to her. I grew up in Dallas. I've always he captivated me in 2015 when he went on a streak of winning 3 out of 5 majors. And, he won the British Open back in 2017 as well. He has just not been the same player since then. So I'm really looking forward to see if he can kind of tap back into that. But his class, right? The Justin Roses, the Justin Thomases, even guys that kind of fly under the radar, like John Rahm, like Alex Noren, guys who consistently find themselves over the top in the leaderboard. I just love that class. You can throw Jimmy Walker in that group too.
Yeah.
Guys that have kind of Gary Woodlands, those guys who have kind of snuck into
the young guys. I'm trying to even think of like Cantlay or just like Patrick Reed, like the real kind of
Lowry, Molinari.
The young guns. I mean, it doesn't stop. And Spieth, it's kind of weird how he fell off. I think he fell off because his driving was just not as consistent.
Also his putting. He used to be, the putting used to never, ever be a question with him. When he was winning majors, his putts were automatic. The 3-putt was incredibly rare for him. But now, yesterday you saw that they're unfortunately just way more common.
Yeah. Remember on the short putt, Spieth would look at the hole.
Yeah.
Putt it in. Yeah, that's exactly right. And Spieth he doesn't have the most he doesn't have the best long game. I'd say his ball strike isn't even the best. But the way he was able to putt, and the thing I love about Spieth is that his mindset is why he's elite. It's why he won, because he expects to birdie, each and every hole. He plays super aggressively. And that's when he was at Augusta, when he was at his absolute apex. Yep. When he was, absolutely at his apex. So we have Garrett Jones here. We're talking PGA. We're talking a little NASCAR. NASCAR, admittedly, is something that I just am so far into. I can't really get into NASCAR.
That's more than okay. I completely get that. There's a big cultural difference between, even though there are some tracks in the Northeast and in the Midwest, I think there's just a big cultural difference. That was actually the first sport that I was interested in based off of EA Sports video game. So
no, I respect it, and I might, start watching it more. I'd say maybe it's just very long and the different, the different what's it called when the cautions, they do seem to take a while.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting to watch for sure. But we're here with Garrett Jones. We're going to talk about Major League Baseball. And this is another sport that you actually know more than probably I do about baseball. I'm a pretty casual baseball fan, but I'm definitely getting more into it. I've actually watched like videos of Trevor Bauer like on YouTube, and I like how he breaks down the game of baseball. I know that Trevor's not a big, I know that in Houston, you guys do not like Trevor Bauer.
It's not Astros related at all. In my opinion, I respect what he's done in the game. I just think anytime that Trevor Bauer has something to say, he's going to make sure that he says it and that he's got a big audience to hear it. And I don't know, that doesn't really fly with me. And then he probably had the most, I think I can't come up with any other word than childish thing I've ever seen on a professional baseball field, when he just turned around at Kauffman Stadium last summer when Terry Francona was coming to take out of the game and just completely chucked it over the center field wall. I mean, that guy is already inviting in a lot of skeptics with what he says, what he's done off the field, and then to do something like that. My goodness, I could not believe that when I saw that.
Yeah. So Garrett, it's funny. You and I are probably like different, you know, we're a little bit different in terms of I like the fight, you know, the baseball. I like the fighting or I like the rivalries of baseball.
Yeah.
But are you a purist in that sense?
I would not call myself a purist, because I think there's some kind of a balance between like disliking that stuff and like being like the old man, get off my yard. I love sabermetrics. I think that every team should shift. I think that every team should evaluate hitters using OPS plus. I think that pitchers should be evaluated using ERA plus FIP. I'm not as into it, admittedly, as a lot of people who follow baseball closely are. But I love sabermetrics, and if I were a general manager or a coach of a baseball club, I would absolutely be one of the managers who's known for pushing sabermetrics. So I'm not like analytics. Yeah, I'm not a purist in that sense. I just just something about like guys like Aubrey Huff and Trevor Bauer on both sides of the spectrum. I just don't like the guys who call attention to themselves, I guess. I'm a little conservative in that matter.
Yeah, right. I can understand that. That's what's going to make this show fun, Garrett, is we might challenge ourselves on who our favorites are, because you have some villains and some great guys. So like even growing up, I did like Roger Clemens, and you might not like Roger the Rocket.
He stiffed me for an autograph when I was a young kid.
I knew that he wasn't always like he probably, I don't know if that was roid rage or what was going on.
No,
he's from the Austin, Texas area, isn't he?
Yeah, it was his son. I think it was Cody. I'm not sure. He's got a Kobe and a Cody. I don't know which one it was which. He was playing for the Astros system for the Corpus Christi Hooks, and he was signing autographs before a game, and a bunch of people got to him. I was the last one to get to him, and his dog was at the ballpark for some reason, and he like had to go chase down his dog. So there was probably no ill intent, but I always joke that I hold that over Roger Clemens' head.
And he was at the tail end.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
It's just a funny story.
Yeah. So this season for Major League Baseball, so the Texas Rangers, I mean, how have they been doing the last several years? I mean, they play in the Anaheim Angels division, right, out west. Kind of catch me up a little bit on Texas Rangers baseball.
Right. So 2010 to 2016 was the best period in the franchise's history. This is a franchise that has pretty much been acrimonious since it moved from Washington to Texas in 1972. They didn't even make the playoffs till the mid-90s. And then pretty much every time that they got to the playoffs, they had some great teams with Juan Gonzalez in the late 90s. And they could never really get the pitching together. And they got eliminated to the Yankee just death machine every single year in the late 90s. Those Yankees teams were incredible. And then the team, famously signed Alex Rodriguez to the largest contract in sports history at the time in the mid 2000s. They got some great years out of him, some MVP seasons out of him, but couldn't put it together. Obviously, I mean, even though there's no salary cap in baseball, you're not going to win when you're paying a guy $248 million. It just wasn't going to happen. So they never really figured it out. And the team finally recovered in the turn of the 2010s, back-to-back World Series appearances. They lose both, but they were always a factor. 2012, they made it to the wild card game. They were leading the division every single day until the last 3 days of the season. 2013, they lose the wild card tiebreaker to the Tampa Bay Rays. 2014, they get absolutely waylaid with injuries and have one of their worst seasons ever. But 2015 and 16, they restocked. They got young guys come up and play really well. Sinister Chu and Adrian Beltre had some of their best years. Rudin Odor, Elvis Andrews, some more guys that came up. And Cole Hamels was an acquisition that the team made in 2015 that really put them over the top.
It was a good trade too. The Phillies didn't really get anything out of that.
Right. Yeah. They absolutely. They got they had a couple players. Jorge Alfaro, probably a name that you might recognize. He played a couple years.
The catcher.
He was part of the Real Muto trade. So that's something that Phillies fans are probably okay with. But yeah, pretty much other than him, they did not get much anything else. Nick Williams is another guy who starts.
He had promise, but never really.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't the return that I'm sure you as a peripheral follower would expect from somebody like Cole Hamels.
But Hamels was there, and Yu Darvish, right? Or I'm trying to.
Yu Darvish and Cole Hamels were a great 1-2 punch. And 2015, they famously lose on the bat flip to Jose Bautista and the Blue Jays. They get swept the next year by the Blue Jays again. And in 2017, the writing's kind of on the wall. It was a team that probably could have contended.
They lost in 3 to the Blue Jays.
They lost in 3 to the Blue Jays. Yeah, not much different.
And then the fight happened during that series as well.
That happened in 2016. Yeah, that was in the regular season. So some famous moments you probably recognize. But 2017, they finished below 500. The writing's kind of on the wall that they need to rebuild. 2018. They really struggle. They end up firing the manager. Jeff Bannister was kind of the architect of those teams that overachieved in 2015 and 16. And then under Chris Woodward last year, they got out to a fantastic start. I mean, this was a team that is expected to have a win total in the 60s, but they were 10 games above 500 going into July and in the first American League wildcard spot. And then Hunter Pence, who actually was an all-star as a minor league free agent signing, one of John Daniels, the general manager's best signings ever, gets hurt. Joey Gallo, who should have been, I still stand on this hill, should have been the All-Star Game MVP last year, gets hurt, and the offense just goes absolutely kaput. And they end up finishing with the same record that they did in 2017. So 2020, they come in with kind of similar expectations as they had last year. Corey Kluber is the acquisition of note. Texas gave up almost nothing to get him. He's a 2-time Cy Young winner. He's going to show up a rotation, and they have modest expectations, especially in the 60-game season. But
so do you think it's like so in the West, you have the Angels, right? Who are the favorites out West?
No question, it's the Astros. And I know that there are going to be a lot of people nationally who bag Houston over the head as a joke, as a chance to kind of get back to them. But they seriously, top to bottom. I mean, you lose Garrett Cole, but you've got everybody else, right? I mean, they always funnel in talent, and something that the sports radio hosts here constantly bring up is they don't know whether they're going to have enough in the back of the rotation. But by the same token, you've got Justin Verlander, who pretty much, if anybody else but Garrett Cole wasn't ahead of him, he literally finished second in Cy Young voting. So, and then you got Zach Greinke, who it's so overlooked because he lost Game 7, but he was great for them last year. And
he's tremendous. And he doesn't rely on speed either.
Right, exactly. He's still one of the highest paid players in baseball. And there's something to come with that. And I still think the Astros are going to be more than fine. I mean, Alex Bregman finished second in MVP voting last year. Jose Altuve won the award in 2017. George Springer's in a contract year. This 60-game sprint could mean a lot for him to get some more dollars in the free agent market. So I think that he's going to very much value that. And then, Carlos Correa has been hurt quite a bit. But other than that, I really do not see a single hole in their lineup. I mean, they move guys that were around in the outfield a little bit, but Yordan Alvarez has kind of spun his tires here in summer camp. But they can put him pretty much anywhere in the lineup. There's not a single weak spot in their order.
Do you think that these pitchers, though, you look at Verlander and Greinke, aren't they in their mid-30s, though?
Yeah, they are.
Are you kind of worried about the age of these guys?
They're In pretty much any other circumstance you would be, but they're two unique cases, right? I mean, Justin Verlander, we saw what he could do with the Tigers, 2 no-hitters, triple crown, MVP, Cy Youngs. I mean, you name it, he did it in Detroit. And then when the Tigers started to taper off, he did it with them. He kind of lost command of his stuff, but the trade to Houston just brought him to a complete second life. I mean, working with the Astros, a more sabermetric-driven franchise, has been so big for his career, and that has really changed things for him. He's also got less pressure on him pitching behind Garrett Cole and in front of Zach Greinke. They've kind of moved some pieces in and out with the rotation around him, but now he's the guy, and I think that could change this year. He had a surgery. The coronavirus pause really helped him, actually, because he got more time to recover from the surgery. And then Zach Greinke, one of the most unique guys in Major League Baseball. He's just such a unique, weird dude.
Yeah.
But I see nothing to this point that indicates any signs of regression for him. I mean, he got that big contract going in. Arizona signed him to that big contract in 2016, knowing that he was going to be in his mid-30s. So I think that tells you pretty much all that you need to know. So I don't worry about the two of them.
So Hinch is not he's not the manager.
No, he was fired along with general manager. Oh man, I'm completely blanking.
But who is the manager currently?
Right now, it's a guy named James Click. He is in his first general manager job. Jeff Luhnow was the name of the Astros general manager who was fired. He and AJ Hinch were both fired by Jim Crane. The owner really stamped his foot down on that issue. He didn't even want to wait for a suspension. AJ Hinch is suspended the entire year in Major League Baseball. He's definitely going to be back managing somebody next year. I think San Francisco is probably a good fit for him. I don't know how much you know about Gabe Kapler with his 2 years with the Phillies. Probably nothing good at all. That was a shock that that San Francisco hired him at all. And I like Gabe Kapler a lot. I liked him as an analyst.
I know why you like him a lot. He's Mr. Analytics.
Right. Okay. I like Gabe Kapler as a person and as an analyst and as a player. I don't like him as a manager at all. And I think San Francisco will get that after they.
He's like Chip Kelly in the NFL. I think Gabe Kapler.
Yeah. That's a great comparison. Anyway, I think somebody like San Francisco will hire him next year. But yeah, so
I could see him as well, or maybe even the guy from the Red Sox that also I think what's Alex Cora won a championship.
Yeah. And Alex Cora was a part of the cheating scandal. He was pretty much the architect in 2017. So I'd be curious to see if he ever gets a Major League Baseball job. That's two major strikes for him. Carlos Beltran almost got the Mets job too, and he was also involved heavily with that scandal with the Astros. So I wonder if those guys ever come close to a Major League job again.
So, Garrett, other than the Texas Rangers, what young team in the MLB is a fun up-and-coming team that has young talent that can take a leap, a team that hasn't made the playoffs maybe, but is ready to make that leap and kind of like a sleeper pick for this year?
Yeah, it's no doubt the White Sox. That's a popular one. I'll give one for each league. I think it's the White Sox for the AL. The Rangers actually made a big trade with the White Sox in trading Nomar Mazara, who – not a dig on him. He did a lot of really good things for the Rangers, including hitting a 508-foot home run that I was actually in attendance to see last year. One of the best sporting moments I've ever seen in my life against the White Sox.
Was it to center field?
It was to dead right. It was pretty incredible. And the moment I saw it come off the bat, I was like, all right, that's one of the longest home runs that I've seen in this stadium. I was actually in the press box for that game, and pretty much all the press brass was like, oh, it's not loading in StatCast. They're like, oh, it's not loading in StatCast yet. That's weird. It took about an inning and a half for them to put it in, but they finally put up the number, and there was just a collective shock when that happened. But I digress. Yohan Moncada is one of my favorite offensive players in the league for Chicago. They've done enough to kind of shore up the lineup with Yasmani Grandal, who's a switch hitting catcher. They threw a lot of money his way. I think that it's going to start to pay off. I wonder if they have enough with Ronaldo Lopez and the young pitching talent to get them over the hump. But I think that Chicago could contend for a wild card spot, especially in a shortened season like this. And then I'll just go ahead and discuss them because, we'd be remiss not to. They are getting so much attention and love. The Cincinnati Reds are shockingly going from a team that spent 5 years in the bottom of the NL Central basement to for whatever reason, consistent World Series picks in this preseason. It's unbelievable. If they do that, that would be one of the best baseball stories we've seen in a long time. But they finally decided that they were going to focus and upgrade the offense because they've had pitching at certain points. Luis Castillo's a guy who could contend for the NL Cy Young. Joey Votto obviously is the most consistent offensive player as far as drawing walks that you're ever going to see. But they decided to break out the wallets this offseason. They signed Nick Castellanos, Shogo Akiyama, and Mike Moustakas, all to fairly sizable contracts, and their offense is going to be just so much better. So I think that Cincinnati could slide into one of those wild card spots and create some damage in the playoffs. But both of those teams, Chicago hasn't made the playoffs since 2008. Cincinnati hasn't made it since 2013, I believe, 2012.
Yeah.
So those are two popular picks that people think are going to take advantage of the shortened season.
You talked about the Texas Rangers. They don't play in the I didn't know that they were AL. They're not AL, right? Why
they're
are they
AL West? So they're in the division with.
Did they change over to the AL West?
No, they've always been in the AL West. The Astros changed from the NL Central to the AL West. That might be what you're thinking of.
Right, but it's nice that in Texas, like, you have that rivalry where they play each other.
Right, and when the Astros were in the NL Central, they used to play every single year, the last week of May, and then the second or third week of June. I always thought that was really cool, having that kind of natural interleague rival.
That is close by.
Right. The Silver Boot is the trophy that they play for, the Rangers and the Astros. Most people will say it's pretty farcical, and I'd agree with them because usually, you go back to the years that the Rangers were in the playoffs, they would beat the Astros 15 games out of 19. And now you're seeing the Rangers literally did not win a game in Houston at all last year. Houston won, I think, 14 games head to head. So they're never good at the same time. Ever since the Astros came to the AL in 2013, one of them has been good and one of them has been bad. So I would love to see them both contend. A Rangers versus Astros wild card game one day would be a dream. Yeah, that would be incredible for the sport. That would be incredible for baseball in Texas. Obviously, you're playing second fiddle to football in the state, but that would be something that I think would be instrumental for the growth in the state.
Yeah, it's interesting that Houston growing up was just with Ed Wade was just not a good franchise at all. I mean, they were like the bottom feeder of Major League Baseball, and that's when the Texas Rangers, you had Josh Hamilton, you go back to Michael Young, probably your favorite player.
Wow, very good. I'm extremely impressed.
Yeah, I think who was it? Gagne. I'm just gonna mention guys that I think were on the Rangers. If I could date myself back to list some of the pitchers actually that were on the Rangers World Series. Well, you had Cliff Lee. Did you have Lee?
Cliff Lee was a trade deadline acquisition in 2010. You had Derek Holland, who played for both of those teams. Matt Harrison was a pretty big aspect. He was pretty much hurt the entire time, both World Series runs. CJ Wilson was a guy who defected after the second World Series run.
These aren't like the most household names.
No, they're not.
Trying to get household. Who are some household offensively? You had Beltre, who I definitely remember.
Yu Darvish and Cole Hamels were probably the two biggest
household. Exactly.
Today you've got, and that trend kind of continues. The Rangers never really have those big, massive, nationally recognized names. They're never going to bring in a guy like Garrett Cole, but they do get a lot out of what they have. And Lance Lynn and Mike Minor are two names that you should know. They both finished top 10 in Cy Young voting last year. They were two of the best pitchers in baseball when you look at pretty much any advanced statistic. And there's a real reason why, and he's back in 2020 for the Rangers. Jeff Mathis is one of the worst offensive players that you'll ever find in Major League Baseball. And I'm not saying that as a leg to stand on. Statistically, he bats below 200, maybe barrels up 1 to 2 balls for a home run a year, but he is by far one of the best defensive catchers that you're ever going to find. He worked so well, and he completely unlocked Mike Minor and Lance Lynn's potential. That's why I think Corey Kluber can contend for another Cy Young this year. That's why I think Jordan Lyles and Kyle Gibson are going to give the Rangers a lot in the rotation. I do think that they have, with those guys, a top 10 rotation in Major League Baseball. But yeah, that kind of opened up another tangent in this conversation. But
no, it's all good.
Right,
you're allowed to insult players on Rover Sports. That's the thing.
Yeah,
that I try not to take it so seriously. And I thought that the guy was going to be a speedster, like a Michael Bourne. I thought he was going to be the fastest guy when you talked about that poor offensive player. But let's see, Garrett, so you are a baseball enthusiast. I bet like a lot of your friends, you're probably the most into Major League Baseball. Do you watch like MLB extra innings? And do you keep track of even the Northeastern baseball team?
Yeah, I love MLB Network. In the summertime, like in normal times, I always got that on as I'm going to bed. And I just love the game as a whole. You know, it's funny. They're actually
sports bar setup. You got to get a setup where you're watching 3 games and where you're betting on baseball.
Yeah, I love the MLB Network personalities, and they usually do a really good job cycling out games, so you feel like you've watched all 15 games if they're all playing that night. But you know, it's funny you mentioned that going to school in Missouri. My goodness, I mean, obsessive Chicago Cubs and St. Louis Cardinals fans. I mean, you talk about loving baseball. Missourians love baseball. And I knew a lot of people who, you know, weren't going in the same field as me, not pursuing sports journalism, but were just as into baseball with the Cardinals and just as in to the Cubs if they came from Chicago. And that was kind of cool being like a third party in that rivalry. And to their credit, Kansas City also was pretty good in my time there. They won a World Series right before I got there. So they've got a lot of really good fans, but they, you know, had to rebuild, and over the past couple of years, interest has kind of tapered off from them.
I think Kaufman is one of the prettiest places.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. I was looking at a picture today. I went to a game there 2 years ago with a good friend of mine who had a birthday today. But yeah, that's absolutely one of my favorite venues. I've never gotten to go up to any of the Northeast stadiums. I would love to make that happen one day. But I'm sure you've gotten to visit those parks,
like Fenway, Yankee Stadium, and Citizens Bank.
Beautiful. I mean, every single one of those are just bucket list.
Citizens Bank I like the hitters' ballparks. I like the hitters' ballparks, but in the Texas Rangers Stadium, you got the Dallas Cowboys there. You have the Mavs, so you have Jerry and Mark Cuban. You have big owners there. So Texas, I'm sure, like you could, like the Rangers. I bet they're decently popular, but
they are popular, especially when they're winning. When they're winning, Dallas has. They have Dallas's attention. I say this as a Dallas sports fan myself. I think that Dallas is one of the worst sports fan bases in the country, just because it's so hot and cold. Honestly, the two fan bases that are most consistently supported are the Mavericks and the Stars.
I knew you were going to say the Stars when you say consistent, because that's hockey. Hockey is their own little niche. They don't get any radio attention, and they're in their own little bubble, but they love that sport.
Right. I mean, but there are people in Dallas, it's very strange, who only love the Stars. They give the Stars all their attention. They couldn't care less about the other 3 teams.
They actually resent the other sports.
Consistently supported team in Dallas just because they've built such a consistent brand. It's kind of changing. It's a changing of the guard with Luka Doncic, but with Dirk, you knew what you were getting. Ever since they got through a rough span in the 90s, you know what you're getting with the Mavs and Dirk and Mark Cuban. No matter who's around them, they consistently are one of the best attended teams in the league. The Mavs are absolutely no problem. The Rangers, like I said, they are supported when they're good. When they're not, it's a social event, and that's with pretty much any city. You're going to get a lot of that. But Rangers games become social events more than kind of an attraction to the city as a whole. With the Cowboys, you obviously have the biggest sheer number of fan bases, but you have so many fans who are bandwagoners who just love it because their parents grew up with it. They just love the brand. They love it just to love it. And you get a lot of fans who really don't know what they're talking about, who aren't in for thick and thin. When the Cowboys are winning, everybody is a Cowboys fan. But when they go through tough times like they have in the late stages of the Jason Garrett years, you get a lot of those bandwagon fans. So because of those things,
that'll insult them and just will jump off the wagon completely.
Yes, and you get a lot of those just weird hot sports takes from fans who don't really pay a lot of attention. And I don't know, I don't like the Cowboys fan base. I just think that that aspect of like not riding through on thick and thin, it just really bothers me. But
and I think that maybe it's because I think it's they expect greatness, and it's not an underdog fan base. I think that you, Garrett, like the underdogs. Just kind of talking to you, you like the Rangers because it's your niche, it's your kind of team, But the Dallas Cowboys, like you have to line up in a big line to be a Dallas Cowboys fan, and then even when you try to talk to Cowboys fans rationally, like about expectations, it just seems like a kind of a fan base that'll certainly turn on you.
Exactly. And that's what I don't like about it at all. And the reason why I have such a detached relationship with the team as somebody who grew up there was because in my lifetime, they have not been good. I mean, let's look at it, Spencer. 3 playoff appearances in my 3 playoff wins, I should say, in my entire lifetime. 3. I mean, you've seen 2 Super Bowls in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's just the complete opposite on my end. I've only seen them win 3 playoff games. I've seen way more first-round exits than that in my lifetime. So everybody talks about like the glory days of the Cowboys in the 90s. I never saw it. I never saw it. I've only seen them be just a cesspool of mediocrity. And it just baffles me that they draw in so much attention and so much expectations because I've just never seen it in my life.
Well, I think that kind of communicating here from a third party, I think that the Eagles fans, though, Garrett, are like the toughest. I think they're really tough, like nasty fans. If you're a Cowboys fan, I actually think maybe Cowboys fans respect the Giants. Actually, out of all of them, because I think that the Redskins are the team.
You mean the Washington football team?
The Washington football team, of course. Hey,
all jokes aside, like I'm very I thought that was great to see that the Redskins employee was willing to come forth and allege those things, and I thought that was very brave. And I think that there's going to be a lot of changes for the better, and I hope that she is heard out. But I'm glad that you and I can join together in collectively laughing at the Redskins the Washington football team just for what a terrible month that they've had. I mean, they cannot find a good headline to save their life, and I just love it. I cannot.
You just love it. So you just hate that. You just hate everything about them.
I mean, out of the Giants, the Eagles, I hate the Redskins more than I hate the Giants and the Eagles combined.
I don't know why they're terrible.
I don't know. There's just something about it. There's just something. It was the name. It's Dan Snyder. It's the quintessential. Let's just throw money at Albert Haynesworth. Let's just throw money at the biggest ticket free agent.
The name.
And just hope it sticks.
No, I don't know. I'm not like as crazy about changing names and changing traditions.
Oh no, I didn't really feel 2 ways about it either. It was just another reason to dig on them.
Oh yeah. With the assault thing, I don't even. It's just such a dumpster fire right now, and the Redskins, they kind of, why I kind of don't like them is because they get a lot of hype for no reason every year, and but I really don't hate them. And the Dallas Cowboys, as a Giants fan, I really don't.
I like Ron Rivera quite a bit. I think that he could be an instrumental piece in turning them around.
I think he's an all right coach, but I still think he's a little bit overrated.
Yeah.
I don't think
he's a better guy than he is a coach.
He's not he's not the splashiest of hires, but the Dallas Cowboys, going back to our original point, as a Giants fan, I never really had a threat to really hate the Dallas Cowboys because they're this big team. They have a big to do about things. And you might have a great regular season here and there. You will steal the Jessica Simpson headlines. You'll steal Greg Hardy and Joseph Randall and all these guys. You'll just take in troublemakers. Again, you have all this expectation, but you're never really winning anything. So it's nothing to really be scared about. In all the big Giants-Cowboys games, you had the Giants win the division against the Cowboys at Giants Stadium, which led to the Super Bowl.
The
You had the
Cowboys
game.
always win. The Cowboys always win the season opening Sunday night game on NBC.
That is true.
The Giants win the last game and they win the division. That's just the way it's always been my entire life.
The Giants have not been like that. They haven't been the model of consistency. I think Philadelphia, even before the Super Bowl, I think that they've owned the NFC East. The Giants have their two. Without the two Super Bowls, the Giants, like, they really haven't been around dominating. But that just kind of speaks more to Eli Manning and just the magic that those two seasons were. But of course, I remember the JPP game where he blocked the field goal. But the Cowboys, I think, have won maybe more games versus the Giants, especially that opening season game. But the Dallas Cowboys, when you go back to their playoffs, against the Lions, they played very poorly and were fortunate to get out of that game.
Yeah.
With the holding call, the Lions too, Matt Stafford. That's a game that Stafford should have put away for the Detroit Lions. Then they went to Minnesota. That wasn't even close. The closest was the Green Bay game, but even yet, their defense was not ready to stop Aaron Rodgers in that game. I mean, what did you think about the Cowboys in those kind of playoff scenarios?
That's the one that I might err on the side that they really should have won that game. And I feel like yes, you're right, they should have stopped Aaron Rodgers, but there was still a significant portion that was involved that, okay, there was something else at play here. It is now an unequivocal fact that Dez caught it. I thought that was clear watching that game as it went on, but it was clear that they were just not going to recover from a gut punch like that. That was the one game out of all those playoff disappointments that I really thought that there's no doubt in my mind that they should have walked away. They were the better team that day. They should have walked away going to an NFC Championship game, and who knows what happens out of that.
Maybe. I think the problem with the Dallas Cowboys is they've never had a defense that can just take over. I mean, against the Saints, that regular season game actually 2 years ago, I was thinking, wow, this is a defense that can win a championship, that can get hot. Then they beat the Seahawks and played well in that game against Seattle. But then against the Rams, I mean, they have a backup running back and McVay, and that game was just absolutely baffling to watch.
Right, and that game was way closer than it should have been. I mean, they were. I don't remember specific. It's been a while since I went back and watched that game, but there were certain games. There was a certain point where I remember saying this should have been 35-7. Like, there were some dropped interceptions, there were some dropped touchdowns, some missed opportunities in the red zone that should have been like a 3 or 4 score game, and it ended up being a 1 score game. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They just weren't clearly not the better team when they went head to head in those, and they were a better team than Seattle, and that was really strange. I remember that was only the third playoff win I had ever seen in my life, and it was a weird feeling. Like, wow, the Cowboys just won a playoff game. Like, this feels weird. But yeah, and then the
game was weird in itself.
Yeah, and then CJ Anderson goes and runs all.
The game was weird because Seattle kept Russell Wilson they held him back for no reason at all.
Yeah, they really did. But yeah, so that's like one of the primo playoff disappointments for sure.
No, but yeah, talking about the Dallas sports scene, and now it's going to be going back to our original discussion. I'm here with Garrett Jones. Garrett works in Houston. He's a graduate of Missouri, and now kind of going into it, I think it's going to be fantastic kind of having baseball, just seeing how logistically this is going to play out. It's a 60-game season. And as a casual fan, I am excited to see the 60 games. I think you'll see a lot of fans because it's not that many games. And I think that they're in Texas, are you guys allowed to have some fans in the ballpark actually? So some teams will have a home field advantage?
Originally, that was the discussion. I'm sure you're aware, as is anybody who's watching, the COVID numbers have gone up in the past month in both Dallas and Houston. So I don't think that you're going to see that before the regular season ends. They had fans yesterday at Texas Motor Speedway at the NASCAR race. Not sure that was the best call. I mean, I don't want to take this in a political direction or anything like that, but I'm not sure that was the best decision. And I really hope that we don't see any kind of a mini spike around that event. But I think that Major League Baseball will avoid the optics of that and avoid any kind of risk at all. So I don't think that there's going to be any fans in the stands, but yeah, it's actually interesting. the Rangers and the Astros both have to travel more than any other Major League Baseball team because they'll be playing most of their games, with the exception of a head-to-head series at home and road versus the NL West team. They will be playing all their games against the Angels, the Mariners, and the A's. That's a lot of West Coast travel. And you look at it as a bird flies, they'll both be flying the most miles out of every team. So I'll be curious to see how both of them respond to that. And then obviously you got the West Coast teams, right? You're playing at Colorado, at San Francisco, at San Diego, at Arizona, and at the LA Dodgers. Both the Rangers and the Astros are. So all that West Coast travel is really going to add up.
But it is, from what I understand, like the AL and NL are kind of getting together, right, for the 60 game kind of stretch run.
So each division's playing its corresponding partner in the National League. So the AL Central's playing the NL Central, the NL West playing the AL West, the AL East playing the NL East.
Yeah, and it's amazing rivalries. I think baseball, even up north, would just gain so much more popularity if, like, the Phillies were playing the Red Sox, and like it was like a regular.
We'll see that, and the Yankees versus the Nationals opening night on Thursday. I think that's a great matchup. I'm actually objectively excited to watch that game. I obviously don't like the Yankees, but I think that's a really cool matchup. Washington versus New York, and defending World Series champions versus the team that I think is hands down going to win it this year. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, and Scherzer, Garrett, Cole, to start it off. So it would be interesting if they figured out a way to have more of these matchups. Now, if I were actually in Major League Baseball, I would have the Rangers. If you're not going to have any fans, I don't know why they're not in Arizona then, because then you could just drive the bus everywhere.
Yeah, no, that I think there's a definite argument for that. I don't think they would keep it strictly to ground transportation, but I totally could have seen a scenario where, the West Coast teams play in this bubble, like we're seeing in the National Hockey League. I think that would have been completely fair. And boy, with baseball, you are taking, and it's fitting, right? You're swinging for the fences here, because we saw the good news with the NBA and the NHL today that their coronavirus positive case numbers are, absolutely amount, right? The NBA had 0, the NHL had a negligible amount. Not that any amount of the virus is negligible, but you get what I'm saying, right? Something that like it's not going to threaten the existence of their bubble.
Exactly.
So clearly the bubble was the way to go. We've already seen a bunch of positive tests for MLB. I just hope that them traveling in and out of ballparks doesn't completely throw this thing for a loop. Because I think that would be absolutely destructive to the future of baseball.
Yeah, I think that with baseball, if a player is going to have it, I think that you have to just roll with the punches, how it's going to be, and then they have to quarantine. And I think this is going to have to happen in other sports, but I think football will learn, and even college football is another discussion, Garrett. But I want to thank you for coming on tonight, for joining me, for talking baseball. We're going to even have more specifics. I'm going to get more into the game of baseball. I'm excited to watch, and I got a lot to live up to your knowledge of the sport. So hopefully I can keep up with you, Garrett, on baseball. It'll be a fun challenge.
I appreciate that. I always love our discussion. We cover so much ground when we put our heads together, and maybe one of these times we'll actually keep it concentrated on one topic, but that makes it really fun.
That's, I guess, what Rover Sports is about. But next time, Garrett, maybe, if you want to, we'll pregame it out, we'll have a discussion and we'll stay in that discussion. But it was fun. And in this time in those sports, you eventually have to get from one to the next. And that's kind of where it goes. So,
yeah, good stuff.
All right. Thanks, Garrett. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.